You said you entered the draft for WNBA,
Yep.
or
So
what was that process like?
I was drafted second round to Seattle Storm.
Okay.
And so I was brought in to their training camp, and the training camp is honestly at that, like, it's the most stressful thing because you could get cut day one, you could get cut the last day. I was cut the last day. The reason I asked you to be a partner and a COO in this company is because you stepped into that project manager role and you acted like it was your business. Caitlin Clark is doing a tremendous job of elevating women in sport. The biggest thing that I took from like my journey was that I'm capable of doing whatever I set my mind to.
What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan Snod. It Rhymes with Odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today, we're having another amazing guest in the studio. Today, we have Chelsea Poppens. Chelsea, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into this.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. You would categorize yourself as I would say like a partner in an agency, in a marketing agency.
Yep.
But you also have an interesting background because you were a college and professional basketball player. So we want to talk about kind of all the fun things in your journey, places you've been, the things you've learned and stuff like that. How did we first meet? I'm trying to backtrack here because I think I shot a video for a basketball clinic for you.
Yeah. I got your information from one of my people to do videography for a camp that I was like putting on for kids in the area, and you came in. I had a sports psychologist come, and you did a recording of incorporating the camp and whatever he was saying, and you did a great job. So that's our first introduction to each other.
Sure, and that was probably like 5 years ago. I think it was quite a while ago.
I'm
like, how long ago was that?
It was right when I kind of retired from basketball, and I was trying to figure things out. So yes, about 5 years ago now.
Sure. Well, I'm really excited about this conversation because we're kind of all plugged into this like community here in Des Moines, but also like the marketing side, the athletics side, because I shoot a lot in athletics, obviously, but just love plugging in because there's so many mirroring aspects of like business, athletics, trying to improve yourself in other ways. I think it crosses over in other areas, which I think we'll talk about as well as we get into this conversation. But before we kind of jump into everything, if you could just tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do currently.
Yeah. So I'm actually right now a COO and partner of Day Cloud Studios. It's a marketing agency out in Omaha, Nebraska, located in the Blackstone district, if you're familiar with that.
Is it by the Power Life Yoga is in that area?
Yeah. Power Life
I've been
Yoga.
there before because I shot a video because I do videos for them. So I'm like, that sounds familiar. So.
Yeah, it's a great like trendy area with a lot of good food spots and happy hour spots.
There you go. That's nice.
But so we do a lot of branding and web development, and I love our small team. We're kind of in this weird mansion in the Blackstone area, at the attic of it. But it's like if you look at it, you wouldn't like suspect that we're in there, but. It's a nice space.
That's awesome. So I think before we kind of now we're at current day, but I think it'd be fun to backtrack a little bit to kind of your background. So if you could tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, and how you kind of started your life early on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually from Appleton, Parkersburg, Iowa. I grew up on a farm. I grew up with Coach Thomas. He's the kind of an NFL or an AP legend who kind of helped to create for NFL players out of Appleton, Parkersburg.
And what area of Iowa was that in? I'm unfamiliar.
Cedar Falls.
Okay.
So it's about 30 minutes out of Cedar Falls.
Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so from there, I went to Iowa State on a full ride scholarship. Played under Coach Finley. He's a hard ass, but I love that kind of coaching. It's kind of like Caitlin Clark's most recent interview where she was talking about Coach Bluter, and she likes that tough coaching. She likes people to tell her when she's wrong, because that's how you grow. You have people call you on what you're doing wrong, and they'll tell you the things that you're doing right. So I really loved my time at Iowa State. I had a lot of great teammates, and then
what position did you play in basketball?
Power forward.
Okay. Because were you like what do you call like a 5 in high school, and then they demoted you? Were you always the same position?
It's not a demotion.
Well, I would say like. Because if you're in high school, you're like, oh, you're this position, but then you go to college and now you're not in the same structure. It's like you have to play a different role. I think of like my father-in-law. He's 6'8", and he played basketball for William Penn. He was a 5-man all growing up. Was like he always says BMOC. He was the big man on campus. He always talks about that. But when he went to college, he went from being like the all-time scorer, like dish me the rock because I can dunk on anyone to like you're setting picks for the All-Americans and you're lucky if you'll play.
Yeah,
your role changes.
player.
So like I was curious if there was a similar thing there or if you were always kind of in that role when you went to college.
It's kind of funny. So like I was a 5 in AP. When I got to Iowa State, there was no like it was kind of just like open run. We had a lot of freshman post players. There's a lot of new players. Wasn't a lot of post players, so it was kind of like you had to fight for who's going to start against the people that you were brought in with. And so I was actually a 5, but we had a 6'7" post player who
Holy cow.
who preferred to shoot threes. So of course, but
it seems fun out here. I'm just gonna launch some threes.
So I actually was told like your bread and butter is post work, so we're gonna play you as the 5 and keep Anna Prinz, who's the 6'7". She would shoot the threes, and so she kind of played a little bit more of that power forward, but it would interchange. But like they would just kind of considered my bread and butter that post work.
Sure. So as you went to the college side, what would you think was like the biggest difference from playing college basketball versus high school for you?
I would say I played AAU in high school, and my high school team was not. I mean, we had a lot of fun, but we didn't make it to state. Like we weren't the top tier kind of high school team, and we were. I mean, we worked hard, but I don't think we were that elite level play. With that, when you get to AAU and the competitive factor is like at this level, and then you go to high school, it's different. And so the difference between going to college at Iowa State is like I don't consider myself. I don't think I was good when I got to college. I think I was purely athletic and I was a hard worker and I had a motor that didn't stop. And that's what separated me. Like I was not the best. Absolutely not. Like you listen to interviews of Coach Finley or other coaches talking and I was unorthodox was like the nicest word for it. I had to fix my free throw. I shot one-handed free throws for the first 2.5 years. Like it was really, I got made fun of for it.
Sure. Did they go in though?
They did.
So
I drastically changed.
You should have like been granny, throw it granny style. If it goes in, you're 80% granny style. Toss that thing granny, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but I was unfazed. As long as it was going in and I was playing well. I think the biggest difference was the defense. I did not know how to play defense when I got to college. And I think that's the same thing with a lot of athletes that get to college is like you start playing especially at like Iowa State, the non-conference games, and then when you get to Big 12 play, it's like baptism by fire. And it's a completely different level of play because the players and the athletes are at like they're so honed into their craft and they've had time to adjust and like build that chemistry and IQ. And I mean, you can kind of, if you watch the non-conference games, everyone's kind of like chunky, getting a feel for how you play together. And then when conference play, it's like you have to be locked in because everyone is good. And anyone can win on any given night. And so that was the learning curve of stepping in and learning how to play at that level, coming from a small Iowa school and kind of relying on athleticism and work ethic.
Yeah, I love that. And I connect with that too because I played basketball in high school and I was a 5-man, but I'm 6'1". So when you get to varsity level,
you're small.
I'm tiny. Like I'm the short dude and I'm like, this is weird. But it forces you to adapt your skills, you know, you gotta be faster, get those big guys to get big eyes. They're going to swat you and get them up in the air and then go around them or whatever. And I was the same thing. Like all of our tall dudes that were over 6'5", they all wanted to shoot threes because that was cool. I'm like, if no one wants to play 5, that's the one position on the floor I can get playing time. And if I got to box out or do set picks, I don't care. Like, I just want to play. Like, I will do whatever. So I think that's an interesting, like, take of, like, you can hone those skills, but then there's the whole other side of your game that you probably didn't focus on until you get there. And then you're like, oh, all we did was run 2-3 defense. Now it's man. And, like, I'm out of shape for this or whatever the challenge is. You know, it's like, oh, now we're going to change the offense or change the defense or whatever. So,
but you've already learned how to, not in a sense, survive or like adapt and find your role because obviously like you understood that those spaces, those positions were already full and there was people already waiting for them. But you like honed your strengths and you learned that role.
Sure.
And that is like the difference of kind of figuring out where you fit in a system or fit in on a team. Is understanding like, oh, there's a weakness here. This is something that nobody else wants to do. And so like Iowa State, I really thrived in rebounds because rebounds isn't about like talent. It's about
just positioning.
Yep, it's about effort and who wants it more.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, well, I have that drive and that motivation. I'm going to do the things that nobody else wants to do because that's how I get playing time. So like that same mindset that you had, that's what I think kind of like helped me succeed at Iowa State, is doing the things that nobody else wanted to do.
Sure.
That's where I'm going to thrive in.
I love that. Because what was your major while you were in school?
Kinesiology.
Okay. So you'd mentioned before we started you had a master's degree. Did you do that back to back, or did you take a pause, or what was the process of your education and during the basketball times?
Mm-hmm. So I did kinesiology because I wanted to do physical therapy. And it's funny because after college, I got drafted into the WNBA, and there's like a time frame of your career, like post-college. You get like those 5 years of prereqs. They expire after 5 years. And so I missed my opportunity to go to grad school because I wanted to lean into my professional basketball career. And because of that, I didn't go to PT, but I did have 3 knee surgeries. So I ended up doing my own pretty much physical therapy on my own and learning kind of that dynamic. And then near the end of my career, or like kind of during it, I guess, during those down times of me rehabbing and like emotionally, physically, all of those things, kind of recreating myself during those times when I couldn't play basketball the way I wanted to. I needed a different challenge, and I needed to kind of like reassess my value. Not saying that my value comes from those things, but I just felt the need to kind of invest in myself. And so then when I was rehabbing my knee in Florida, I lived there for a time, I looked up the MBA side of things as I like business, analytics, strategy. And so I did my MBA through UF. And then while it was like an online course that we came in every four or so months to do like the exams and orientation, and then it was for working professionals, people who have full-time jobs. And me, I was kind of like the outlier. I was like the youngest in the group. I was just like putting a ball in a hoop kind of thing. And so it was a 2-year program, and I was playing overseas. I was in Puerto Rico during the hurricanes, and I was like, sorry guys, I can't like do this. I can't do these tests because I have no Wi-Fi. And so it was kind of it kind of filled my downtime during basketball and the rehab. And when I graduated, that kind of shifted in my mind. I'm like, I have my MBA. I should use it. I'm ready for a different chapter, a different challenge, because right now I have really just owned this space of basketball, and I know I'm capable of being something different, being something bigger than just the safe space of who I thought I was.
Sure. No, I love that. And so to backtrack a little bit so we can connect the dots, you did 4 years at Iowa State, right? Mm-hmm. Did you do a redshirt year to get in the program? You just did 4 straight years?
I was relatively healthy all 4 years. So it's funny, after I got out of college, that's when I had most of my injuries.
Sure.
Yeah.
You like get your diploma and then your legs give out on the stage and fall.
Yeah.
Like, what just happened?
You're old and busted
now.
Yeah,
the fountain of youth stops at the graduation. So you graduate, and then at what point did you decide you said you entered the draft for WNBA?
Yeah.
Or what was that process like?
I was drafted second round to Seattle Storm.
Okay.
And so I was brought in to their training camp. And the training camp is honestly at that, like, it's the most stressful thing because you could cut day 1, you could cut the last day. I was cut the last day. And
Seriously?
I was getting some playing time, and the coach at the time, Ryan Agler, he was known to not really want to play like rookies. And so it was me or this other girl, and she was a couple inches taller than me, and he cut me. And I remember going back, and like I was devastated because you have this dream, and you're like, well, I guess I'm not good enough. And I went back into his office after he let me go, and I was just like, I just kind of want to know what your reasoning was, like, that I can work on.
Yeah. You need some closure when you get to that level. Like, I've worked my entire life to get to this point, to just say, no.
You weren't enough.
Yeah. Why, though? Like, I'm never going to sleep at night if you don't tell me why.
And it was like, I remember crying after you need to process it, and then you come back and like have the right questions. And he was like, it's literally just because she was taller than you and it looks better on the roster.
That sucks.
I know.
Let me work on that. I'll put insoles in my shoes or something. Like, gosh.
I'm going to lie about my height from here on out, that kind of thing. But I honestly, that was like, I appreciated his honesty. Like, there's no real reason. It's just because she's taller than you. Mm-hmm. And it ended up working out in my favor anyway. I took a trip to China with a touring club that had reached out after I got cut from Seattle. and met some really great athletes, really great women in sport, and came back, and San Antonio was waiting for me. And so they brought me in, which was like the perfect mix because it was people that I played against, Daniel Adams, Daniel Robinson, Big 12 players who I knew and they knew me. And it was just like, it was like a great team chemistry. And it was probably the better team chemistry than I would have had in Seattle Storm at that time. So it was like the perfect situation for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you went and played in China then for the first bout, or was it in other parts of the country or the world, excuse me?
China. So I went, So we went over to China and we did a little bit of traveling. So Beijing and a bunch of other different places, but we had teams from Australia, Hungary. I think it was Australia, Hungary, and China that were there, and we just kept kind of playing each other in like a tournament. So,
how long did you live in Asia?
We didn't live there. We were only there for 3 weeks.
Oh, okay. So it was more just going, play games.
Yeah, it was just a 3-week tour.
Did you get a chance to get out and experience the culture at all? Or
we did the Great Wall of China.
Okay. That's like you got to.
Yeah,
you're there. You got to do it.
We went to the black market where they sell a lot of the knockoff stuff. And I was like, this is so cool. And then all my stuff breaks a week later. But
sure. These jackets look like they've been stolen from other tourists. These are kind of weird. It's like, okay. You said the black market. I'm like, oh man, they're like selling like illegal stuff on there.
Knockoff Louis Vuittons and that stuff. But
the Oakleys, but the O for the branding's like.
I got a Rolex for my brother-in-law, cracked like the next week.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's actually like a Raylex. It's like they changed one letter. The Folkleys or whatever.
Waste of money.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you're doing the touring stuff. How long did you kind of play overseas before things started steering you back to the States?
Mm-hmm. So I played about 6-7 years. I played in Poland, Switzerland, Sweden, Australia, Puerto Rico, and Lebanon. And I mean, I don't regret that time doing what I loved, even though if it was difficult. I had those 3 knee surgeries that kind of took me out of my sport, the game, multiple times. Puerto Rico was probably the bane of my existence. I went there twice, and I've had 2 terrible times. But the people, I love them. But I had just recovered I went over to Australia, tore my ACL, and I was rehabbing, so I missed training camp. And then my time back, I was like, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico and prove my health, prove that like I'm healthy enough to play. And I 8 minutes into the first game, within 24 hours of me arriving in Puerto Rico, I tore my other ACL.
That's like an Aaron Rodgers moment right there. That sucks.
Devastating. And so then I spent some time in Florida. Actually, I got my timeline back. I'm getting old.
Okay, no worries.
So Poland was actually after Australia, and I had a microfracture surgery that I had to come back for.
What body part was that?
The same knee.
Oh,
so
your knee.
It's the
okay.
ACL hitting. So I actually had a contact one where my bone came out and popped back in.
Oh my gosh.
And so because of that cartilage breakdown, you have to go in and you have to recreate, poke holes in the bone to create that blood.
Are these from contact on posting up? Is this from jumping and landing weird? What are the things that are causing that constant pressure there?
My first ACL was I was playing defense and I took a step this way and the other girl's knee came in and clocked mine.
Oh.
And the second one, I was put in a bad position by my guard. It was a fast break. I wasn't really looking. She threw me a ball and I tried to catch it and there was a guard in front of me and my knee kind of just went. So I don't really know if it was contact or non-contact, but it's just a bad situation.
Sure.
And it was probably because of overcompensation of that other knee. And then the microfracture is just a result of the ACL and it coming out and then clocking back in. So you got that bone bruise that can degrade if it's enough. And so it kind of just flakes away that cartilage, which is why a lot of athletes still need that microfracture surgery.
Sure. So after all the injuries and everything, you decide you're going to kind of finish that up. What was kind of the thought? Because I'm sure that you put a lot of thought into that of you've been playing overseas for, you said 6 years and the bout at the WNBA, all that stuff. What was kind of the mindset going into that decision for you to decide, I think it's time for me to be done?
Mm-hmm. I had considered it because if you've ever had a knee surgery, you understand the mental toll that it takes on people, the emotional frustration of not being able to do the things that you're used to doing and your body performing at that elite level. And ultimately, I didn't want to be done on something else's terms. Like, I wanted to choose it. And it did come down to that choice of me just wanting a different chapter, being tired of the politics of playing overseas and not making the right, like that kind of money, and just ultimately wanting to change the direction and re-identify myself. And graduating with my MBA was that turning point of just being like, all right, I'm ready. I feel equipped to enter into this next phase of my life.
Were you at UF studying doing online courses while you're overseas then?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know if there was a delay there. So you get the master's degree. You've kind of made this decision, like, basketball's over. Were you looking to pursue that kinesiology PT route? And obviously you're not doing that now. What kind of career path ideas were you thinking when you got that master's degree?
I was actually thinking medical device, where I could incorporate the medical kinesiology side with my business side. And I did look into working at Stryker, and the opportunities that I was offered with Stryker were not aligned with what I wanted to do or my background of things, because I mean, ultimately, it just wasn't the right route for me. And so I ended up working at Meredith Corporation when I retired and hung up my sneakers. And it was very I was in video rev ops analytics, and it was very data driven. And then I went from being this athlete out in the world and like relationshiping with people to being behind a desk in a very data department. So it was just kind of shell shock, I guess, a whiplash into this different life. And I had to shift what I wanted to do. I ended up leaving there to just jumping into athletic training with CKP Athletics and leaning on that a bit more. And then COVID hit, which is another, like, I was going through that whole like unemployed time frame because I had just left my job at Meredith Corporation to figure out what direction I wanted to run with everything that I had. And I ended up getting a job with another kind of marketing agency or marketing company and working with them, and they got brought into DayCloud, which is kind of like that space where I fell into DayCloud as a sales associate.
Sure.
And
what was the company before? Was it
Bluefin?
Bluefin, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't think they're anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of them that got absorbed when because like I worked in an agency for 4 years before I went off on my own, and it was the same thing. Like OBI bought up, OBI Creative out of Omaha bought up Alt Studios and a couple other ones, and then similar thing. Like they're just some little fish getting kind of sucked into other outfits. So
yeah, and I mean, it was fate that I kind of got brought into the company I'm with now, DayCloud Studios, because I was like dabbling. I was still figuring out what I wanted to do. I was like, sales, all right, cool, and then a project manager role opened up there, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to do it. And then I was like, Lord, if you want me to do this, I make it very clear. Yep. They actually hired for the project manager role, and I was like, if you want me to do this, like, make this not work out or something. And 2 people didn't work out in that project manager role. And then Liz Hunt, my partner, she came to me and she's like, a little bird told me that you might be interested in like the project management role. And I was like, I'll give it a whirl.
Sure.
And
inside you're like, this is the sign. Like I was asking for this.
I was like, I asked God to make it clear. And so then I was in the project management role, and Liz will talk about this. She's like, the reason I asked you to be a partner and a COO in this company is because you stepped into that project manager role and you acted like it was your business. And the way you did things, the way you optimized things, the way you tried to save money or make money in certain areas. And like I owe that to like where I grew up, and like that kind of foundation is like take pride in what you do and the people you do it with. And I mean, that was a compliment coming from her to be able to say that like I went from my sport and owning that and taking pride in it to like my now career post-sport.
Did you work on the farm when you grew up there, or were you just like around that work ethic a lot when you were young?
Yeah. So that rain or shine, you got that farm chore. So we would actually load hogs at 3 a.m. in the morning, 1 a.m. in the morning on a school night with my dad, and then have to go to school the next day. Yeah. And so it was kind of just ingrained in you. And like, if you want to do this, like you got to do it 100%. You go muck at the stalls, go like haul manure, do all of these different things. If you say you're going to do something, then do it. And so that just kind of like followed me throughout my career and my journey.
That's great. So you're taking extreme ownership of this PM role, kind of catch the attention of the owners and figuring that type of thing out. What was kind of the next step for you to become a COO and kind of ascend in the ladder that way to actually become a co-owner of the company?
You mean like the difference between or within the organization, or
yeah, like what was kind of so you started as a PM, caught some attention that way. What was the next step for you in the career journey?
It was honestly pretty smooth because I was already seeing my mind is just like process optimization and strategy. So I was already in my PM role, and at a small agency, you wear lots of different hats. And so it would be me like stepping a little further into like understanding the finances, understanding the expenses and like overhead costs, and finding areas to clean up to save the company money. And that stuff's fun to me. That stuff comes natural to me. And so stepping into my COO role was actually very smooth because I was already kind of doing all of those things. The main difference was actually the dynamics of my coworkers and me shifting from being their coworker to being in a position of authority, position of power, and kind of being with Liz on these things as CEO. Whereas they had thought about me as like that friendly coworker, and the dynamics changed from being a friend to being a part of the decisions that help keep them their job.
Sure.
So,
well, and it's figuring that out because I think, like you said, when you treat it as if it were your own business, you start looking at, hey, we're wasting so much money here, or we need to kind of reposition this and that type of stuff. We talked about a little bit before we started rolling the challenges of running an agency business and some of those things. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you guys have faced and kind of the traversing some of those things as a company, because there's a lot of things that go into running a profitable agency.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the main things right away I noticed is like the turnover of employees, especially I think with creatives where they have the option to do freelance work. And if it's always that dynamic of working for a business and then churning out creative works and trying to constantly be creative in a space where you're kind of like boxed in into what the client wants, versus freelance and choosing your clients, having a little bit more freedom over like owning their own business in a sense. And so like the turnover of employees was a learning curve. The struggle, especially post-COVID or during COVID, post-COVID, and just like the normal workings of a marketing agency, especially having a good year. It's a roller coaster. It's a fluctuation. There will be good years and there will be like bad years, dry years. And I know a lot of marketing agencies, including ourselves, we were in a space where we had too many employees on staff, and we should have laid people off. But Liz Hunt, our CEO, she actually, and we were talking about somebody else who did this, like was going without salary for a couple months in order to keep people on staff. And it was kind of that same scenario of just like, you don't want to let your good people go, but that's just kind of how the economy is, how businesses are holding on tighter to their marketing budget and not spending as much. And just kind of, it does ebb and flow. And that, I think that was definitely a learning curve when it comes to like the marketing agency and understanding the natural flow of things.
Sure. Well, and I always think too, it's much easier to be small and scale up than the opposite, because then that's the thing that no one likes about owning a business is like getting rid of people, because it's not their fault. It's just the fact that it's the situation and it doesn't fit, for what you want, and it's hard. And similar to the getting cut, last day of training camp, it's like I'm sure coach would want to keep everyone on, but we can only have somebody on roster, and we need to field the best team. It's the same thing with the business side. It's like we can only have so many people on staff. We got to get rid of people. What was kind of the good number for you, the amount of people to have on staff where it wasn't a stressor, but you could still accomplish all the things creatively that you needed to do to deliver for clients?
We've actually shifted our vision like kind of dramatically since last year. So we have 2 people on payroll, but we work with a lot of our contractors that we've been working with for the last, Liz has the business for like 12 years. So contractors that we've just constantly been working with over the years. And we have like are like good people that we constantly go back to, and they execute. They do great work for us. And so we've been lucky enough to have those people on our roster of people. And so shifting it a little bit that way, we've gotten rid of, we had another room in the mansion where we had like a conference room for clients to come in and have meetings with us. Got rid of that just because it's an overhead cost that we don't need, especially
that optimization you were talking about.
Yep. And so that we can pay people to either be on staff or pay our contractors what they deserve.
Sure.
And so that's been a big adjustment, especially as we get into 2024, and even our audience and the type of people we want to work with is changing. And we started our podcast agency, Rocket Show, and we're just kind of diving into, like, we want to work with more branding or more web development, large branding campaigns, because that's Liz's background as a designer, and those are just the things we enjoy.
Sure.
And so it's kind of shifted. Like, I'm sure you've worked with like difficult clients that you're like, this is not my ideal audience of the type of work that I want to be doing or the type of people that I want to be doing. And how do we do that? How do we get more of those type of people?
Sure. And I always notice too, like what you put out, you get more of. So if you don't want more construction company clients, don't publish any of your construction company stuff. It's like that type of approach to it. But I think it's also interesting, like you mentioned, the kind of contractor gig economy is so different now, because when I worked in agency, there were 20 people on staff at my company, and most of the creatives freelanced outside of work. One, just for supplementary income, but that's what kept their juices flowing. You know, like you said, if you get a branding packet and you're a designer, it's like, well, I have to follow the brand guidelines, and they've already designed typography and colors and logos. Like, I'm so limited on what I can do creatively. So then you go and seek out other projects to kind of scratch that creative itch, keep the interest going. But I think that's a big part of it too. Like, no matter what job you have, even if you're not a creative, if you're like a operations person or a salesperson, like finding things outside of work that can keep that interest going, whether it's painting or playing an instrument or doing something that keeps that passion and interest like alive, I think is super powerful to do.
Yeah, that's like, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I call it filling all my buckets, where like the sports bucket, I joke around because Day Cloud Studios, like nobody I worked with was even remotely involved in sports. And so when I told them I did color commentary, they actually thought that I commentated on the color of the team's jerseys and what they were wearing. And I was so appalled and so offended. I was like, no. Right. I had to explain that.
We're talking X's and O's here, people, like real smart stuff, not this color of yellow is pretty. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I was like, never felt more like a jock in my life.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, and you do like talking with people, like my wife's family always says sports ball, because all of them weren't super into sports, but it's just finding the right like connection point that you can be like, oh, well, it's like this. Then you have a comparison. You can be like, well, yeah, you like pro wrestling? Well, this is like the Vince McMahon of this, that. It's like you can kind of connect it to the thing, I think is a powerful thing. As kind of you guys are going to continue to rev up, what is your guys' vision for the brand now that you're, like you said, you're wanting to focus on branding? Who's kind of the ideal client? Maybe someone's listening out there that is somebody that could fit that client persona for you. Yeah,
we still work for, like, we work with a lot of different industries. I really do, what we always talk about, we really do love, we work with Valley dealers, the blue collar, the farmer. I mean, that's at the heart of me. I always love the blue collar workers because they truly rely on you for your like expertise. They don't really question it. They're like, I'm just a farmer, or I'm just in this blue collar industry. We have a waterproofing company in Omaha. We work with Building Omaha, Anika. They're the electric union over in Omaha. Those are probably the most like chill, like fun companies to work with, industries to work with. But we also do CPAs and law firms and different things like that. Like those people are great too. They're just a little more particular. There's sometimes a lot more stipulations or legal stipulations around the branding and the type of work that you can do.
Sure.
But we are open to anything. It's just more branding focused or web focused. Branding and web kind of go hand in hand as far as the color palettes, the vernacular that you're using for each brand, and kind of lacing it through all of your assets, social media, everything else. So branding, I say branding, but it's much more vast and larger than just your logo mark, your colors,
Yep.
the basics of a brand. So if that answer, I was a long-winded answer
No,
to your question.
it's perfectly fine. I'm vibing with it because I was from the agency, so I can understand like what you're talking about. A thought I wanted to mention too was when you were playing, like when you're trying out for the basketball team in Washington and doing like really in your basketball career focus, did you ever think you'd be where you are currently with your career, like doing what you're doing, or was there some other thought in terms of like, oh, I might be doing this? Like, what do you think college age or in your 20s Chelsea would think about where you're at in your career now?
I don't think I would have. I don't think I would be able to envision where I'm at now. But I mean, that's kind of the magic of it. You step into spaces that you couldn't have drummed up for yourself. I mean, I wanted to be a physical therapist when I was in college, and in a way, I found a space to still incorporate the sports side with like CKP athletics and camps and small groups and working with kids on speed and agility and different things. And
because those are you're still doing basketball camps as like a side hustle or an extra thing.
less camps right now, like more private lessons, small group training with the kids that I like. Some teams, like I coach a group of boys, and they're so sassy. Like middle school boys are so sassy. They talk so much crap to you, and then I love playing. If they need me, I'll play with them at the end, and I'll just demolish them.
Sure, put them in their place, get them to stop talking so much smack.
Oh yeah. So that's really fun to me and special to be still in those spaces, and especially even at the Iowa State level with those color commentary. And so I've really been blessed to have like those different buckets of myself, still shaping kind of like my past and my experience of playing basketball and the things that I thought that I would be doing. I don't think I would have picked a marketing agency, but after doing my MBA, it was a kind of the perfect blend of the creative spirit that I have and the business acumen and strategy and optimization. So it was a good blend of all my skills and talents.
No, I love that. You mentioned you're doing the CKP athletics, the training, like individual people, and then also the color commentary. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the broadcasting side, because I think that's another cool way that you can stay engaged with it. Another way you can coach kids, but you can also like keep your basketball IQ as sharp as possible to help commentate on things.
Yeah. To be honest, it kind of fell into my lap. Lindsay Finley used to do more of it. She's Coach Finley, or not Coach Finley, Billy Finley, which is Coach Finley's son, who's on staff. She is his wife,
Gotcha.
former player. So she was right around my age. She graduated right when I came to Iowa State. And so she stopped doing, I think she recommended me, since I was in the area now, to start kind of taking over what she was doing with the color commentary. And honestly, I was absolutely terrified when I did it. I remember having the mic in front of me, the game going on, trying to process everything, trying to do enough research before the games. And I was like shaking. I was just sitting there shaking the whole time because I'm like, it's live, don't get canceled. Like all those thoughts. And
you have Tourette's syndrome to kick in, start cussing on live television.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Shit.
Oh, yeah. And one of the stipulations of doing color commentary for ESPN Plus is you can't be biased.
Yep.
And so playing for Iowa State, I'm like naturally say, we do this, Iowa State doing this. And you can't say we, so you'd be like Iowa State and then the other team. And that's, I mean, I still mess up that every now and then. I'm like, we have so-and-so on the roster this year.
Yep.
And so that's kind of just been a funny play on thing because I'm always a cycling at heart.
Which, how could you reverse, you played for them for 4 years and then you as a fan later on, like you're going to say, that's my team,
Yeah.
Like it's hard to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to not be like, oh, yes.
Yeah, there's a slam dunk
three.
Yeah, the three is good. I mean, the three is
in
good.
their face.
Yeah, but I think I'd love to hear your take too, because like there's a lot of people saying in broadcasting that there's like a lot of just dull broadcasters. Like I hear a lot of this from men's sports, like they'll have like Al Michaels, it's like touchdown Chargers, and you're like, that was a crazy play. Like, there's no enthusiasm, where they're almost too vanilla. They're like too neutral. What's your thought on like having kind of like a little more excitement, or like I call it the Pat McAfee effect, where you're kind of polarizing as someone, but then that also adds some interest to the viewing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I had to intentionally think about the fluctuations in your voice, and instead of just stating facts, you're actually having a conversation. And one guy that I adore, he's great at his job, Alex Cohen. He did the Chicago Cubs. He's now here doing the Iowa Cubs, and he does a bunch of games for Iowa State. And so I love commentating with him because it's like two people in a bar talking about sports, and we'll joke around with each other, and he does all the play-by-play, and like I'll make comments, and then we kind of just riff off of each other. Like the last game that we did together, it was like 68% of the time it works every time, and you just start kind of talking about like random things that come to mind, and those kind of commentating games are just like so much fun. And I've received so many different people reaching out, be like, "That was such a good game. You guys did such a great job." And it's so good to hear those kind of things, that people are still entertained while watching the game of basketball. So.
Sure. No, I think it's super fun because so my wife and I were obviously with Iowa's Hawkeyes. Basketball has been on a national stage. Like, I mean, I think of it just being an Iowan, and it's like, oh, it's a thing. But then you talk to people from other states, like, this is all over the place. This is kind of crazy. What's been kind of your take on just the rise of Hawkeye basketball and what it's done for the sport in general?
Caitlin Clark is doing a tremendous job of elevating women in sport and shining the light on kind of those disparities of like females in sport, and the change in the way people are working in the past couple of years to like either get women's sports on TV more or get those faces and social media, the way the world and everything is working with social media. Caitlin Clark does a great job of utilizing the NIL space that's like quickly adapting and changing every single day. And I think just that those opportunities, even for, someone in Iowa, obviously it's not the most sought after for like kids who are looking to go to college. You're like, oh, Iowa snow. I don't know if I really want to go there. Maybe I want to go to Miami or something. But the fact that she is capitalizing on like University of Iowa and everything that's being offered to her in Iowa, I think it's a great opportunity for places like Iowa State and their athletes to step into those kind of partnerships and expand and be a little bit more open-minded to those NIL and personal branding and other business opportunities to help these women not just be successful in those 4 years, but to be successful in the long run, post-college, handle their money, learn the workings of owning themselves as a business, and kind of, it'd be the optimal space for athletes to like establish their identity a bit more than just them being an athlete. Kind of, we're talking about that identity crisis of you end your sport and you don't know what you're good at. But these athletes are creating their brand as we speak, because they're talking about they're doing their athlete thing, and they're partnering with these businesses that align with their values or their morals, and then they're able to quickly establish that they're not just this person siloed into this label. They have all these different other pieces.
No, I love that. And I think it's super interesting. Like the NIL space has changed so much. Like I look at, Deion Sanders and what he's done at Colorado, and like all of his players that are doing some of the NIL. What's been kind of your take on the NIL space? Because I know when it was first kind of coming about, there's the Johnny Football type approach where like people are like, oh, he's just a spoiled player that just wants to make some money. Like, but then also on the back end, like how much money the Hawkeyes have made last year and this year from Caitlin Clark being on the team. Like, what's kind of your take on NIL in terms of where it belongs in the marketplace, and should it continue? Is it helpful? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
I've experienced two different mindsets on it. People who are like, that's not how we did it back in the day, and they're against the grain on this type of movement and change. And then there's other people who are like, well, it's an opportunity and it's not going anywhere. Iowa's a little behind the curve on accepting NIL and those type of partnerships, and for athletes to have that ability to make more money. I wish I made that much money back in the day, but and so I'm like a little bittersweet on the inside because that's not the way it was working back then. But I do see it as an opportunity. It's kind of a scary opportunity because if there's no boundaries and if there's no regulations on things, it could just skyrocket. And I think right now, having it's such a gray area of what you can and can't do, and nothing is truly defined. And so I think the NCAA and universities have to do a better job of defining those things in order for athletes to not be what's the word, punished for accidentally stepping out of line or misusing the like Learfield ownership rights and different things like that. And a lot of times, even this last year, athletes didn't know what they could do. And so out of fear, they didn't do a whole lot. Or they didn't reach out to partnerships like businesses. And it doesn't have to be large scale like Miami or people in universities in California. It can be small scale like mom and pop shops. Like Iowa is very much a local supported kind of state. And especially places like Ames where the community just like it revolves around the sport and everyone comes to support on a snowy day. It's important to just like also reach out to the smaller companies because those are the people who are there for the long run. Those are the people that are local. Those are the people that have the heart of the university and that are going to be filling you for the long run.
Because there's definitely, I would say, like 2 tiers of NIL. There's the local ice cream shop that's got a player come by, hey, this is the number 15 special or whatever.
Yep.
They might do a little TV ad or something. And then there's like the Caitlin Clark doing a State Farm ad while simultaneously doing Buick, Hy-Vee, like millions and millions of dollars of endorsement deals. But also, like you said, being a steward for the sport and people trying to poke holes in her and like her sportsmanship or her as a person. Like, I just think it's so interesting. Like last year during the championship, all they were talking about was the drama with Angel Reese and LSU. And it's like, I mean, at least people tuned in. That's the good thing. But it's like finding the reason it's not about drama. You just tune in because it's a great athletic bout. They're going to like both put on the best show they can, and whoever comes out at the end wins the national title. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I think that's just the name of the game. When you're on that platform in that limelight, people are going to pick you apart, and that just kind of that's that 1% of people who are able to get into that spotlight. It's just what comes with the gig. You have to be able to take criticism. Luckily, Coach Bluter and Coach Finley are hard coaches, and they'll tell you straight. So you kind of growing up, and I had a lot of critical coaches growing up who would tell it to me straight. So like those type of situations, like you have to be tough-skinned and understand that people are going to pick you apart whether you're on that platform or not. You just might hear more.
Sure. Well, I find so many times, especially in athletics, like people that weren't from that world that hear coaches chewing your ass because you need it, thinking they're being verbally abusive or being too tough. What's kind of your take on in terms of like I wouldn't even say like the softness of sportsmanship, but really the softness of sportsmanship as people are coming up in it now and being tough on people, but in a constructive way, not just to be mean about it.
I am a firm believer in people and athletes being coached in different ways, and not every athlete is going to be carved for that program. And so, I mean, that's why the transfer portal exists, is because if a certain university or certain team and coaching style doesn't fit that athlete, they can figure it out. I know that's kind of a wishy-washy way of not committing to a university in your choices, but I appreciate that kind of coaching because it's tough love. But I know I have had teammates who did not appreciate that as much. And I mean, it's just his style, and you know that going into it. And so if you sign up for a coach and you know their coaching style and you still don't like it, that was your choice, and you got to own that. I mean, Coach Finley, like he does adapt his style to each specific player. And I do think that is necessary because there's some people who can take that tough love and there's some people that don't. And it's just kind of being a chameleon in the way you other people, like you notice other people are receiving how you coach and how you give them feedback.
Sure. Well, I always think of like when I was growing up, we had one of my football coaches was yelling at me in like a middle school weight room session. They were teaching us some stuff and I was doing things wrong. And he was like right in my face, like, if you do that wrong again, and I literally almost pissed my pants because I was so scared. Like I'd just never been yelled at like that, And there's times I see people out in the world that like, I don't think you've ever been like afraid, like scared like that. No one's ever like pushed you that far, but it's not in fact like I want to be a tyrant. It's like, I know you can do better. And I have to get it through your head that you can do better so you can achieve what you want to and what the team wants to, which I think is kind of interesting. Cause like now I wouldn't even say I preferred tough coaching, but I always got it. All the coaches, like you said, would coach differently. But I always, for some reason, got the hard ones that would, they'd be teachers in class, like a history teacher that's also a coach that the whole room's talking But the second I talk to somebody, they yell at me. And I'm like, look, 25.
You can take it.
Yeah. I'm like, you got to hold yourself to a higher standard. It's not. I'm like, there's 25 other people in this class. Like it just that type of thing, which I think is interesting, where my wife, when she was in sports, like if I think her dad who was a college basketball player, helped coach like one season, and like the girls just would cry anytime he'd say anything because they just couldn't take it. So he's like, I can't do this. Like
I can't do girls sports.
Yeah. I can't be like nice about it. Like they have to just toughen up, and they just didn't want to. So
yeah, no, that is a thing. I mean, it's not just in sports, but even in whatever job you are, the way you receive criticism. The best advice that I have ever heard was to take what they say, not how they say it. Because there's always like that golden nugget of feedback that's going to help you grow and help you be better as an athlete and as a person or in your career. And it's not to say like just because they didn't say it the way you wanted it to doesn't mean that you can't capitalize on whatever they're saying and like learn from it and grow from it. Because the world isn't going to be gentle with you. The world isn't going to be so kind to you all the time. And it's just kind of making the best of whatever situation you're in.
God, I love that because it's so true, right? You like. It's the sassiness of the tone or the darting eye contact or the, hey, can you do this after hours? And then they slam it on your desk. And it's like, if you'd asked me nicely, maybe, that type of thing. I totally get that. I think that's like such a profound thing to think about because people don't have time to wrap it in a pretty bow and give it to you. Sometimes you just have to, sometimes they're yelling at it from a sideline. Sometimes they're asking you nicely on a Zoom call. Sometimes they had a really bad day and it just comes out. Like I can see that being kind of the hard thing. It's
not personal.
Right.
Like, I mean, it is personal because it's coming at you, but like everyone has something going on in their life. And I sometimes don't feel like I should have to, I'm a very direct person, but I have to like slow myself down on how I like give feedback sometimes because especially if I'm doing over Slack, like I'll very short clip, like bullet points kind of. I don't want to see emails without bullet points. I don't want to see long paragraphs. And so the way I have to say things, sometimes I have to like soften it for other people to receive it the way that I need it to be received. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I've had to learn coming from tough coaching is that, especially in my COO and partner, this place of authority, in order for employees to receive what I want to or respect me and receive what I have to say, I have to kind of change my approach sometimes.
No, I love that. I think it's interesting too because it all connects. Like you would think, oh, basketball and co-owning a business, maybe they're a little like they're so related. Everything, like anything that will challenge you, push you, it's your communication style. It's how you get and how you receive information, but then also how do you respond when adversity hits or when you're overstaffed and we're like, crap, like we're not taking salary. We got to figure this out. Or, we landed this huge client. Like, how are we going to make sure we optimize it or get the right team in place to help? I think it's all interconnected.
I'd go back and forth on this with that two-sided of the coin of if you're never asked to step outside of your comfort zone or step up, how are you going to grow? How are you going? It's not going to always be a gentle, gradual growth. Sometimes it's going to be just like an elevated growth right then because they know coaches know your potential. They know they're passionate about helping you be a better athlete in order for the whole team to thrive. And I think that there's so much beauty in that tough coaching because they're passionate about you as a person. Not just you as an athlete. Like Coach Finley will always say, you're here 4 years, but you have to live with yourself the rest of your life.
I love that.
Yeah, and he only gets you for 4 years. So, of course, he's going to be a tough coach. He's going to be like, I'm going to push you as far as I can during this time so that you will, like, win in the end. Not just all of these games that you will eventually forget about.
Yeah, and it's so powerful, too, when you know why. We had a coach that would also say that, too. He's like, I'm not yelling at you because I hate you. I'm yelling at you because I love you. And he's like, if I'm not chewing your ass about something, I've either given up on you or you're so bad I don't think you're even going to play, so it's not worth my time.
That's when you should worry.
Yeah, he's like, you should worry if I'm not up your butt about something or if you're skipping class or you got Fs and I'm not on you, you should worry. Like I was laughing because my mom recently got remarried and I now have stepsisters and brothers and stuff. And my stepsister at the wedding was like, oh, I get another brother. And then she was like instantly trying to get me to do stuff for like, oh, this guy was bothering me. You should go beat him up and do whatever. And I'm like, you don't want me to worry about you. Because if I worry and like, I'll be on your ass about stuff. Like
I will annoy you.
Yes, but I'll also be like, I'm going to challenge, I'm going to push you. I'm going to say, like, I'm going to do, you won't like me if I truly act like your brother, because I'm going to treat you like you're my family, because I'm going to like hold you to a higher standard. I'm going to do the things that a coach would do if they care.
Yeah.
Like they really care.
That's
So I think
true love.
Yeah.
That's a true care for somebody.
Yeah. The tough love is because they don't hate you. It's because they want you to do the best in life, which is super powerful. We talked about too, you started the Agency Rocket podcast. You also are looking at starting another podcast. Talk to me about, now you've parlayed this broadcast experience where you were shaken to now you're voluntarily getting on a mic and doing stuff to talk about information. Tell me about that.
I think I realized I don't like public speaking. I'm still working on that, but there's a different aspect with the color commentary that I think I realized I got a late night DJ voice that I need to capitalize on.
Sure. Listen to the hits on 5595.
It is Iowa State women's basketball. Please tune in at Hilton Coliseum. But it's just been really fun because I embrace that fear, that like scaredness, the terror, being terrified, because I know that I'm going to feel so much better down the road when I be like, I tackled that, I accomplished that. And that's like, I'm chasing that good feeling of knowing that I'm not just a stagnant person existing. And so that was kind of the segue. Liz and I were talking all the time. We call each other every day to talk about business, and it bounces around. Like, it's like, oh, so-and-so in the work contract or whatever. And like, our husband, our fiance, all those things. And so we're like, well, we talk for like an hour every day. We might as well record it and create some content from it. And even some of the stuff like you were doing kind of inspired it, because you're just doing what you love and you're creating content from it. And the same thing with the Agency Rocket podcast is like, we like talking about branding and marketing. And I personally have a heart for creating a platform for other people to tell stories, because I've been lucky enough to have that platform. And I know I'm an activator. So I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And so it's been so special to be able to bring people on our podcast to talk about their business, talk about the challenges that they face opening, like launching their own business or balancing work and family or different things like that. And so Agency Rocket, we just launched it a couple months ago. So it's just been really fun to kind of dive in and learn the workings of it. And then my other former teammate, or not really teammate, she played in Switzerland with me. She's out in San Francisco, and her and I talk, and we kind of vibe off of each other. And we want to do another podcast called Champion This.
Okay.
It's not live or anything. It's still in the brainstorming section of things where
now it's out there now, so you're gonna have to do it now. It's the accountability piece. So.
I know. I really plan to. So we're gonna talk. We're gonna use our network in sports, in the WNBA, in our NBA connections, Iowa State connections, and all of the basketball realm. And like, since I'm like, we're all both also in the business realm of things, so professionals who are really just advocating for female and women in sport, or all these other areas, and they're just championing whatever arena, whatever space they're in, and to tell those kind of stories on that kind of podcast and get those perspectives and just utilize who we are, our background, in order to create that platform for people, I think is really special to have that ability. And I just like helping people. And I like sharing stories, kind of like you. And like in this podcast, you're inviting people on to share their stories and what they're doing. We want to bring people in to talk about their platform, the NIL space, what good they're doing in the community as an athlete. Like WNBA players can come on and be like, I have this foundation, I'm doing this nonprofit in the work, and this is how you do it. Because when I was in the WNBA, there's people with foundations, and I had no idea how to establish a foundation or how to get connected with the right people. So I feel like I'm not just in this position but not doing anything with it, any good with it. And I think there's a lot of different avenues that we could go from athletes who are looking to get out of their sport and retire but re-identify themselves and figure out those different labels and what direction they want to run. And hearing stories of other people who have done it, I think, is magical and it's special. And I especially realized this last year because the Aces do an alumni weekend. So that's a WNBA team in Vegas. And so they've started inviting alumni back.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And so I was there last year, and to be around like generations. So Aces absorbed San Antonio Stars and another team. And so even if you didn't play for the Aces, I played for San Antonio when we were brought in.
Yep.
And just to talk to all these athletes about what they're doing now, and to have athletes that are, one of my friends, was going Logic, Samantha Logic. She was going to Israel, but she was like, you know, in that phase of like, I don't know when I want to retire, but when I do, I want to figure out what I want to do with that. And it's just, I don't know, just a space, a community to help others in whatever arena they're in.
Well, especially like in that realm, like I just think of people that have gone on to be great in other areas after sports. Like I think of like Emmett Smith when he retired. He now owns one of the largest construction companies in Texas. Like that was his dream. Like before was just like, well, I love that. I was going to do this, but then I realized I'm really good at football. Like I should pursue that. And then, you know, he's a really good football player. So it's interesting seeing like people where they land afterwards. But then also for me, I've really found interest in like you mentioned, the people's financial stuff, the money management, where you were a pro for 10 years, made tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, and some people squander it. Some people give it to their family in hopes that, or bought their mom a house, which is the common thing. And then, well, mom wanted $1 million house, but now she wants a gardener and a butler and it's like the
all
different
those NFL careers that only last 3 years and then they go bankrupt right after.
Yep. Or I watched like the HBO drama Ballers with The Rock. If you've ever seen that, I mean, it's a fictitious show, but there's a lot of truth in that where the first round NFL pick is his family's just like partying in his house every day, spending $30,000 a month on God knows what. That was
not my lifestyle.
Yes. And he's like, I can't get these people out of my house because they're all like
family.
They're family. They're my aunts and uncles that just quit their jobs to come party at my mansion. I'm like, this is kind of like the problems. Oh yeah, the problems. But it's interesting though because like you said, there's probably people that have
similar situations,
crazy stuff like that. Other people that maybe they're really into like arts. They open an art gallery, or they're, you know, they just wanted to like Forrest Gump approach. I just want to cut that grass for free because they just like, I made all my money and I just like cutting grass.
Just want to relax, own a farm, buy an acreage.
Yeah, find the thing that's interesting. But it's interesting because they pivot, and now it's like you were this person, but now you're different, which I think is similar to your story. But also, anyone when Father Time taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, it's time to hang it up," and you've come to that conclusion, it's like you've pursued greatness in one avenue. Why not parlay it into business or career of another choice?
Your potential to be great in another area is there.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that podcast. That'll be fun because I think there's a lot of interest there. And for me, I'm very picky about podcasts I listen to. Like there's some that they'll do like 20 minutes of banter before they even get into the topic.
Oh yeah, my favorite murder. Like
yeah. Like my wife listens to those. It's like they'll just bullshit for 20 minutes. I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta like listen to stuff. But
that's what my fiance Ryan says. He's like, I can't. They're not even talking about anything.
Yeah. Like, how can you just listen to this? This is mind numbing. You know. Yesterday I did a recording with a guest on the show, and we were just talking for 20 minutes before we started, and I'm just trying to decide if I want to include it at like the end of the podcast because there was some funny stuff we talked about, but it's like you kind of got to figure out your pacing to figure out what keeps people interested. So
yeah, it's so funny. Like we have like recordings Liz and I do where it's just us bantering back and forth, and we're like, we would love to use this, even though it's not actually a part of the podcast or the topic or anything. We just kind of flowing.
Sure. No, I love it. So, I mean, just to kind of tie everything together, what would be kind of I would say the biggest thing that you learned from playing like pro basketball and pursuing that for 6 years, and then also the draft experience? Like, what would be the thing that you would take away if there was a young player listening that's wanting to pursue a career in athletics? What would be the thing that you would tell that person to think about as they're pursuing that?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest thing that I took from like my journey was that I'm capable of doing whatever I set my mind to. And not everybody's going to understand your dream. Not everybody's going to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And I actually just gave a talk to some middle schoolers earlier this week in Appleton Parkersburg about grit and resilience, and that in order to be at that 1%, or in order to reach your dreams, you have to do things that 99% of people don't want to do. And that's saying no to things. That's doing things differently than your friends are doing. Because I learned at playing at that elite level, like I couldn't do everything in college that all the other students were doing. I couldn't do what people at the professional level were doing every night. I had to carve my own path, whether that's kind of being lonely or like worked on my relationship with myself a lot, because doing things differently is isolating. and because not a lot of people are doing those things. And so if you want to reach your dreams, whether that's sports or academics or whatever you want, do things differently. Like, your biggest asset is going to be your work ethic, because like there's talent and then there's work ethic, and you can't teach work ethic. And so lean into that.
I love that so much. No better place to stop the show. Where can people connect with you, learn more about Day Cloud, but then also if they want to learn more about you, where would you send people to learn more about you?
I have my social media, Chelsea Poppens. daycloudstudios.com. There's some information. Agency Rocket Show. Any of those resources will connect you back to me in whatever way possible. But social media is probably the easiest to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Again, we'll put links to everything below in the show notes and everything like that. But if you've made it this far in the show, make sure to give us a subscribe on YouTube. Follow us along on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Follow us on social media if you can, and tune into the next episode. My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening to Rhymes with Odd. We'll see you in the next show. Peace.